Hi everyone, welcome to Reminding Founders, where we talk to founders and entrepreneurs about their early days. My name is Adi, and today we're talking to Brian Glover, founder and CEO of Previewed. Brian, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored. Just extremely happy about the opportunity to be on the podcast today. Definitely want to share our journey, but it's a wonderful cold Sunday where I'm at, so uh, it's probably one of the best days to go. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today. You definitely caught me at the right at the beginning of the day, so it's best to go and get this conversation and this amazing content out to the people. So I'm just ready.
Perfect. So I'd love to hear, before anything else, how did you get started with entrepreneurship?
Oh man, I've been a entrepreneur. I would like to say it's probably encoded in my DNA. I've been hustling since a kid. So it started out selling candy at school, and then it evolved to buying a lawnmower and then cutting grass in my free time during the summer, as well as like breaks and stuff like that. And then it transitioned over to, me wanting to go ahead and dibble and dabble in tech. I initially wanted to go ahead and start a few, startups back in like the early, I would say the late 2000s and then like 2008, 2009 while I was still in high school. Learned pretty much about how this whole tech thing works and fully immersed myself. And it's just been, one step after the next on this journey of entrepreneurship, but it's been something definitely encoded since birth. And I definitely give that credit to my family and those from my community that I've actually seen go through this journey of entrepreneurship to whereas it left a strong impression on me. So this is where I'm at today.
Perfect. And what got you to start Previewed?
Honestly, it's like that moment, and we all get that, lightning in a bottle moment where our idea hits us from the heavens above, and it pretty much just like either act on it now or miss the opportunity. Pretty much, the opportunity was just right. My wife, she was in the process of finishing up her data security as well as cybersecurity certifications. In the midst of transitioning from finance into tech, and when looking for a job, you go from Indeed to, YouTube to TikTok to get a real understanding of what, first of all, the culture is like, what the job, the day-to-day task is like, and just to honestly just figure out exactly, you know, what it would possibly look like if you were there. So I saw that whole process that she was going through, and I was just like thinking, sitting on the couch, it's just like I'm scrolling on TikTok. I'm like, why don't we create like a job board for TikTok? Like a TikTok of job boards or a YouTube version of a job board, and it just hit me from there. It's now just moving 100 miles per hour, and not letting that idea just sit and marinate, but actually take action on it, which led me to this beautiful journey that we're on right now here at Preview.
Amazing. And how confident were you in the beginning? Did you have the idea and then was like, okay, I'm going to do this? Or was it more of a slow, maybe?
No, I would say it was 100% more confident decision because I knew that this was a recurring issue during the like pandemic and things of that nature. I was working with Thrive. They're had a startup feel, but they're more so a growth stage operation. And I got to speak with small to medium sized business owners during the pandemic when finding labor was like hard to come by. With that being said, it was something that was just recurring. And then at the same time, just hearing other individuals, me being a job seeker at a moment in time, I understood the journey and realized that we could put both of these issues together and move forward. So I had the confidence because not only did I experience the problem, but I also got, real live experience from, the horse's mouth, which are the business owners that are like boots on the ground. So knowing that this was a problem, it was just destined for us to go ahead and try to solve it.
Interesting. Did anything surprise you about the journey, like once you started?
Yes, the time span. In our minds, we set a game plan and we set these milestones that we need to hit in a short amount of time frame. I realized very fast is that every time you're presented a timeline for, say, a particular feature, a particular build out, add, times it by two, because you never know what the unknowns are. There's always something popping up. So we did have to realize that that idea of us being able to get everything up and running within 6 months actually turned to like 18 months. So it started to, marinate with us to whereas, you know, the expectations that we set, we had to get more realistic with it because this was an unknown that we were going into. But that was like that one thing that was just like they're constantly hitting us in the face after every turn.
Interesting. And why do you think you had such confidence? Like if you were things were taking time, and I'm sure that like sometimes you have some doubt of like what's happening and where is it going and how are you handling it?
Pretty much I was handling it. It's like I said, an emotional roller coaster initially, because you have your highs and your lows. But at the same time, I had the keen ability to look at, the data that is presented in front of me, but at the same time, be able to identify trends. I understood that we were just, you know, 24 months out or 48 months out before the masses had caught on to what we were noticing as this massive issue. And then, realizing that, hey, we niche down and focus on like the bigger issue of this issue, which are blue collar industries. And we know that it was going to take a time frame to, for the masses to catch up. But honestly, it's just a juggling act. You're actually a magician. You're trying to figure out exactly how to, make a rabbit appear out of a hat when there's 130 different obstacles blocking that rabbit from coming out. So it was pretty much like that for me.
That's funny. How did you realize that the direction that you want to go in was the blue collar? Like, was there a certain event? Was it a learning that you had along the way?
It's the us as founders, we get access to information for the masses, and you know exactly as far as like the latest and greatest technology that's coming out, that's up on the pipeline. Like AI has been in the making now for over a decade now, but having the know-how that the understanding that AI was going to readily impact those that are in white collar industries, to whereas it's a drastic cost savings, to whereas seeing that this technology could do the job of 20 attorneys, 30 accountants, could run a whole sales team, do your marketing, even code, to whereas I saw that it's posing an existential crisis to white collar while everyone was focused and hyper saturated in this white collar industry, we're forgetting that, the things that keep society afloat, keep the lights on, water running, the internet connected, to whereas we can do these things are, left going unfilled, to whereas they're overlooked. To whereas we're setting, at least here in the States, we're setting ourselves up for a major crisis by the 2030s because we're not replacing as many individuals that we're losing. And tech is pretty much overlooking this massive opportunity, which is this gold mine, which is blue collar industries, the trades, the skilled labor force, because that's what's going to be, the bread and butter, highest paid professions going into our future as we start to embrace autonomy with AI and, you start to talk about AGI within the next 24 months, looking at these trends and how fast technology is rapidly advancing, we're seeing where it can definitely be existential to those that aren't being aware of it, but at the same time pose a massive opportunity for those looking to repivot and re-gauge their bearings after the dust has settled with this grand revolution of technology that we're seeing. So whereas blue collar is going to be that thing that we press our children to go into, especially here with infrastructure crisis, water crisis, fires going on in California, hurricane damage here in the Carolinas and down south from this past season, and you look at the rapid change of climate change, infrastructure, our ability to build and rebuild, we're going to need the manpower and labor there. To whereas now it allowed us to focus and us being able to see this, glaring alarm that's coming up on the reader while everyone's looking at all the other chaos going on. We realize that if we hone our focus and focus in, that we could be that, trajectory or a launch pad that changes the whole industry, especially in our field. So that was the main reason and focus why we went down the blue collar route.
Hmm. And how did it look in the beginning? Like the company, what were the first steps that you did to start this journey? And then was it a pivot when you started doing more blue collar, or was it more of a natural, gradual maturing?
It was definitely a pivot because initially when you're a founder and you have a great idea, you especially in any market, you want to take over the whole market. You want to focus and do everything. You want to, I want to compete with the big guys, the monopolies that are currently on the board, like the Indeeds and your Glassdoors, but not realizing that, you have to carve out some space and prove that what you have is valid. So hearing that, speaking with, a wide range of industries, seeing that the massive industries that, had major pain points that we could address were more so in the blue collar, to whereas it just lined up with that focus. And then at the same time, we're also true to the core that we want to leave the world in a much better place than we received it. In order to do so, we need to have skilled individuals that can continue to build and make this thing that we're living on much better. So that was the whole focus there. And it did take time. It took us, I would say, several pivots. We started out with an MVP that was massively cast out to everyone that was looking to post job listings. And from customer discovery, you realize that blue collar industries were, that's bread and butter because they're overlooked, but they have high demand with a major, labor shortage. So all the, gauges and levers were pulled in their favor for us to focus there.
Interesting. Did that surprise you that it went that way?
No, not really. I've always been a tad ahead of the curve. Just to dawn back, this isn't my first startup. Back in like 2009, 2010, I came up with a food delivery app that I was gonna. It was before DoorDash and Grubhub things. It was called Cartel, and it was very similar to what DoorDash and everything was. But being in a small town that didn't have a noticeable startup, environment, that pretty much glimmered. And then I would say around 2014, between 2014 and 2016, wanted to start a beauty app that was all about augmented reality. But again, I was then, 10 years out before augmented reality actually starts to, come into our fruition, in which we're starting to see that now. So just being ahead of the curve and knowing that, hey, I know one of these ideas we're going to be right on time. And it's, God have it that, preview came into my mind and it was just the perfect timing. We have key events that are lined up that if, something like us as preview isn't set up, we're going to fall into a deeper crisis. So it's just part of it. I would just say, to me, I feel like I was just chosen to have these ideas and have the ability to foresight, to whereas now it made me well positioned for preview.
Hmm. Is there any like crazy situation that you had during this journey? Maybe even
Oh
I'm
man.
glad you're laughing.
When I talk crazy situations, you know, crazy situations, having, investors, reach out to you and want to set up calls and then get on the call, they are, gun ho, and then they ghost you. You never hear from them again. Crazy stories. I had one investor offer us like 100K initially when we first pitched the idea, and for what he wanted, it just didn't make sense. To whereas it would have messed up, the cap table as well as future chances of fundraising. To whereas we had to walk away from there, to all the way to having just internal. As a startup, when especially we grew extremely fast when bringing on the team. But that was another thing, clashing the personalities, trying to find that right blend and culture. It led to a lot of funny events to transpire. To whereas now, I can honestly say the team that we have is a solid group. To whereas now we can withstand any storm. So we've had some funny stories, but I just don't want to embarrass anyone because it's not just me that has been impacted. It's been my co-founders, it's been some of my team members. So those are just stories that we will share with those, later down the line once we've met our success. Whereas now you guys can see all the madness as it comes together.
That's nice. Who are your co-founders? Are they people that you knew before, or did you meet them for preview?
So me and my co-founder Minnie, because it's just the two of us. So the crazy thing is, I initially started Preview by myself, and I initially had a first team. It was initially just me as founder, and then I brought on two additional others that I knew. But seeing that early stage when you're in a startup, if everyone's not into the full understanding is that there's no money coming in until we start to make money, that no one can get paid. So we're pretty much eating on ramen and sardines until we can get our big break. And a lot, the first batch of guys, you know, you can probably go 3 months without pay, but when you're 6 months into the journey and you're building, and there's no chance that knowing whether this is going to work, a few people did fall off the wagon. But when that happened initially, on that first MVP, like I tell everyone, it was like me and two others. It was like putting a plane together in the air. It crashed and burned. So after those two guys left, found better opportunities in which I was truly supportive of. I still stuck with Preview. I was just like, I'm gonna pick it up from the ashes, build it back. I built back a better version of an MVP. I threw it out on LinkedIn and I sent a post. I'm like, I'm looking for, these individuals. I'm looking for a lion, a bear, a cheetah, and um, uh, it was another post, but pretty much it was looking for the optimum team to pretty much have a high performance team, the same structure that the CIA uses and agencies here uses to put together individuals that may not know each other but would be high performing individuals. Whereas when my co-founder read the post, she was working at LinkedIn as the director of engineering, and she seen it, saw the mission that I was looking for and the type of individuals. She sent me a message request, and when I seen who she was, I was just like, "This can't be." I was like when you're initially starting out, you're thinking we're no one just yet.
Crazy.
We're just an idea. But from that initial conversation, she's like, "I'm all on board. I love the vision. I see where you're trying to take this thing, and I want to be a part of it." From there, I would say a week later, she had put in her notice of, that she was leaving LinkedIn, which was like even bigger because it's just like, wow, okay, you're leaving something that's well established that everyone uses and love, and you're coming to start something over that's yours. And she came on board, and we've hit it off, and pretty much have been rocking and rolling. It's yin and yang. She's much more calmer, I'm much more high energy, to whereas it's a amazing fit for our team, for our organization, to whereas we're starting to see some traction here, to whereas that this is a good match. And I would honestly say one of the best decisions that we both decided was to come together and work.
Wow, that's crazy. What do you think about the startup made her believe that this is going to work beyond the idea? Because I would assume that like a lot of people have ideas, but she obviously saw something in you that was like, I believe this can work. What do you think that was?
The grit and resilience, because before Preview was already in existence for about 10 months before she came on board. And saw all the ups and downs, high points, low periods, points that, periods where I didn't think we would survive, but we still made it. And then at the same time, being the biggest believer in my vision and staying true to what the mission is and what type of level of impact, and ultimately what Preview is looking to not just be within the short term, but over the span of the next 20 to 30 years. What type of level of impact can we have on people's lives with what we're doing today? That is, an individual will look back 10 to 15 years and be like, if I never came across Preview, I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in today. To whereas I feel truly thankful that someone had provided me the guidance needed to whereas I can hit and achieve my wildest dreams and my career. And that's, you know, with her buying into that and with me having a passion. And then at the same time, I'm very relentless. You know, I'm going a million miles an hour. I'm trying to speak with as many people. I'm trying to push out not just the idea, but at the same time, you know, the results of what this idea can bring into the world and the true outcome, and seeing to it that, you know, most people after going through a few hundred investor calls, if you hear 100 no's, most people won't go back. But you know, seeing to it that I'd already spoken with roughly about 500 investors, it was just, you know, like this guy is not gonna, you know, give up until, you know, it is fully dead. And having someone see that and back you is amazing. And she hopped on board, and it's just been a, you know, rock and roll ever since.
That's crazy. How did you get the first people to join when you still, even before her, like the people who you said it's not like you had any funds to pay them in the beginning, right?
I'm very transparent, and some people will say, you know, the ability to, you know, make anything sound amazing, but the gift of gab. But honestly, it's just the transparency. With the very first initial guys, it's just that, hey, it's a huge chance that this won't work, but if it does, the opportunity and what that can mean, and you just having your name aside of something that could be, you know, something that's generational, that could change not only today's time, but think 15, 20 years. And I'm always that big picture thinking. I'm always thinking about that. But at the same time, I lay out everything that can possibly go wrong, but I then lay out and double down on all the, you know, massive upsides that can go right. And when people see that and understand and know that you're genuinely not trying to, you know, screw people over. Another thing was just being able to go ahead off the initial, you know, initially when bringing people in, laying out this is what the roadmap looks like to getting you paid. This is what I'm hoping to potentially get you to, and seeing, you know, others' bigger picture and how their bigger picture feeds into the bigger picture of what we're doing here at Preview. That really got people going on. Plus, it was something different, and you know, it's very unique, but at the same time, there's some things I don't know why people join, because it was sometimes that, you know, we didn't know whether we were going to have enough money in the bank to keep, you know, the lights afloat here at Preview. But people stayed and started to, you know, buy on and buy into the vision, and that's the biggest thing. If people can buy into the vision, they will follow you into fire and back, and that was the whole thing. And everyone wants a strong leader that fights for them, that's also genuine and has a, you know, down to earth personality, that doesn't set themselves up on a, you know, pedestal, that gives themselves this god complex, but is also a human that wants to see others win. And that was another thing. A lot of individuals, when they come around, they know that I want the best for them just like I want the best for myself. And that's very rare when you're talking founders nowadays.
Hmm. First of all, interesting. It sounds like you have a very unique skill. Like if you could hire people even before you could pay them, that's like very interesting. What do you think is something that, like an early sign you had that things are going in the right direction? Like what was a moment where you were like, this is actually gonna work? This is like, some indication, situation.
Seeing that we were doing dual market, we're a marketplace, we're a dual-sided marketplace, doing customer discovery on both sides. That was the biggest thing. And most people, most founders, you know, we have this thing where we have an idea and then we try to just build an app versus speaking with people, because the people are what's gonna, you know, see to it that you have longevity and that you're building something that has real substance and value. So when we started to speak with career seekers as well as employers, and we started to see that, you know, uh, blending point where both pain points coincide with one another, we knew that we were heading down the right path. But at the same time, every day we're learning something new. And like I said, it's not a perfect straight line. It's not linear, but it is very much like a roller coaster's ups and downs, zigzags, turns, things that you never thought you would be doing that we're doing now. And, it would probably never have been to this point. We probably wouldn't have niched down if we never started to talk to people and get the vision out there. And when we started to hear that pain point and see where we could fit in and be like that great, you know, interlocking chain, that's when we knew that we needed to continue to push forward. And that's what has us here today.
Amazing. Where did you find the first people that you talked to? Like the tactically, like how did you do it?
Oh, I talk to everybody. My wife would tell you,
That's a very good
I go to
answer.
the grocery store. I'm talking to people. We go out. I'm talking to individuals. If I see, a young guy right now working at Walmart pushing carts and stuff, and he looks like he hates his job, I may stop him and talk with him and ask him like, and like the thing is asking people what they want to do, what are some things that you want out of life, what's that big end goal for yourself, and then providing people a possible solution to get to that end goal. And that's just starting with you being curious, and really genuine and really in tune with what you're doing. If you're not so hell bent on how much money you can make and more so focus on how much change you can make, you get outside your own ego and pride and start to talk to people. And that's where it happened. Those conversations, just you never know what a random conversation may take you. That person may be a good segue into a possible partnership with an introduction that you need to an employer, or it may be a phenomenal testimony on a career seeker side that someone can say, hey, I met this, when was the last time someone said, hey, I met Elon Musk down at the gas station. He saw me in my Honda, was telling me about these Teslas, and I just had to get it. It's not that you don't see that happen. So just knowing that, one day that this will be formulated into a movie and that this thing will come to an end, and when they do write the finishings on my book, I want those type of stories and testimonies to happen, to whereas people can honestly say that the person behind the brand honestly believed what they were selling and really got out and touched the people. That's the biggest thing.
Wow. Do you think that is something that just came naturally to you, really? Because you said you always entrepreneurial and you always did things, of this genre, selling even candy when you're a kid. But is there something that you think pushed you forward to be this kind of person that you do want to leave a mark in such a, profound way? Like you don't want to just do something.
Yes, I would say it's a correlation of things. I would say from my upraising and being around strong, figures, whether it be uncles, fathers, cousins, family members, to the impact that my wife has had, to amazing books that I've read, like The Alchemist, and reading books on how not to just be a better salesperson or a better founder, but a better human being. So reading the laws of human nature and correlating, grabbing all that information and distilling it down to whereas you can then use it, it all coincided into the individual that I am today. And then life experience. One thing I realized early is that you're going to have to get outside your box, and things that make you uncomfortable are the things that are needed in order to really hit the growth that you're desiring. And just being able to embrace that, like I tell everyone, I initially, I didn't like, I was very scared and very timid to speak to people, very shy, very, stuck inside my box. And I realized that the only way that I'm going to ever hit this pinnacle of success that I had formulated for myself is that I have to step outside that. And once I stepped outside that comfort zone and embraced the discomfort, embraced the suck, that's when things started to, turn around and started to, look right. To whereas now it's just like obstacles and setbacks and things of that nature are going to happen. But if you stay true to the core and the mission and everything that you've been through, you will find a way to continue to, stay true to your mission, push through, and be resilient, and ultimately, develop that rare thing that everyone looks for out of founders, which is grit. And, that all attests to, where I'm in today. So, yeah.
What scares you now?
What scares me now? Uh, the biggest thing, not being able to fulfill my, potential, you know, and not being able to truly feel the potential that you have for yourself. If I wasn't, capable of fulfilling or at least pursuing the vision that I have for myself, that fears me. Not, leaving this earth one day and having a deathbed full of regrets and what ifs. I don't want that. I'd rather, fail a million times and leave this earth with no regrets than to never fail and leave the earth with 1,000 regrets. And that's the biggest thing. That's what fears me. And then at the same time, another thing that adds on is just, what am I going to leave here afterwards? How am I going to leave the world in a better place that I found it? Or is it going to be in a worse place than I found it when I do call it, and God does call me home and it's over, said and done with? That's what I fear.
Interesting. Do you think the whole journey as an entrepreneur, and specifically even this last company that is seems like it's very much about people, like more than even the companies before. Do you think it affected your personality, the way you behave, you are?
Yes. Yes, I would drastically, because prior startups was just, we're all founders. We can all be real. We all think about the money. But when you find something or calling that supersedes the want and need for money, and you can, associate that with actual change, and change is having impact on others' lives, and you will see to it that you stick with it regardless of how hard it may get, no matter what obstacles you may incur, what may happen. And that's what I feel like has changed. That whole shift of mindset and shift of focus, and understanding that, hey, I know the money's going to come. It's just a result of how many people's lives can I change. If I can change a million lives, I know that can equate to well over $1 million. If I can change 1 billion lives, I know that can equate to well over $1 billion. But now it's all about how many lives can we positively impact for the better with what we're doing now. And yeah, I can drastically say it has changed me as a human being in general.
Do you think it changed the kind of people that you surround yourself with?
Yes and no, to a degree, because you are who you put yourself around. But honestly, I'm also one that you never know what you can learn from someone. So you have to have an open mind, but at the same time have boundaries. Whereas you're well protected. So I would say I'm still open to it. I wouldn't say necessarily you want to place yourself in good rooms, but you don't want to go in that room and just like, hey, these are the people that I want to talk to, and miss the opportunity to potentially talk to that guy that's over there in the corner shy, because that may be that one person that changes everything for
Hmm. How do you balance the, on the one hand, you have your actual practical work, things that need to be done, working, and then you have the more human side of serendipity and going to meetups and events and, talking to different people and hearing maybe new ideas, maybe new perspectives, maybe even finding someone that can help the company grow. But like, how do you balance these two things? Do you
you.
even do both of them?
Man, there's no balance. You don't get that balance until after you done put in a ton of hours and you have the success and everything. That's when the balance is found. But at the end of the day, all things need to be done, and you have to find a way to fit it into the imbalance. There's going to be times that, like I've said, I've been in events, meetups, and things of that nature, and then have to, duck off to, one of the little quiet rooms or a cubby and hold an actual sales call. It's being able to understand that you have to be as active and motion is necessary. So as much motion as possible is good. But you don't, even slow motion is good for you. It's better than no motion at the end of the day. But at the end of it, don't get so hung up on trying to find a way, how am I going to balance it? Because there's no perfect recipe for it. It's going to just have to fit in where it fits in. And then at the same time, you're going to have to come down to prioritizing what's more important. Is it more important right now that I sit down and do these 3 client calls, even though this investor meetup is here? The investor meetup may be a short term, fix, but the long term value may come from those customer meetings. So it's choosing which one has the best, value and benefits for what you're doing and for yourself as a founder as well as your organization in whole, because it's all based upon your decision making skills on how the survival and longevity is for your company, and it's based upon how you delegate where you're going to spend that time. So that's the whole thing there. Get used to imbalance, embrace it, but at the same time prioritizing what's important and what is key.
Have you ever heard founders get advice that you disagreed with? Like, did you hear some bad advice?
Oh yeah, I get it. I've heard so much bad advice, and it's like the thing is, the bad advice isn't the blatant bad advice. It's the bad advice that's coming from credible sources. That's the whole thing. It may not necessarily be bad advice, but it may be bad advice if you apply it to your particular situation. They may have all good intentions, but it may be bad advice. So I had one phenom. I'm not going to state his name, but great investor, has a strong track record, and he was stating, he's like, "Hey, I think you guys should really, cut blue collar altogether and shift directly to just focusing on tech. I think what you guys have here will be a killer with tech. And it's something that they will be able to embrace and love, and you know, be able to implement into their new process and be able to embrace without with as little friction as possible compared to what blue collar. But my whole thing is, if we would have went that route, not knowing initially in the early days that we were in the midst of a white collar recession with mass layoffs happening month after month, we would have pretty much probably signed and sealed our own death certificate if we just went and focused that way. So sometimes you have to stay true to your core, regardless of what that information that you're receiving. But at the same time, back to what I stated earlier, you have to be the ultimate distiller of information for your, startup, for yourself, because at the end of the day, you have to take the action. Someone can give you a ton of advice, but if you don't act on it, it doesn't really have any, true bearings on the future of your, whatever your endeavor is, or what, the next turn may be. So it's truly up to you. But like I said, there's been good, bad advice. But at the same time, we all know the blatant bad advice to look out for. But I tell everyone, be mindful of the, credible advice coming from credible sources that may not be beneficial for what you're doing. And that's all I would say for founders.
How do you differentiate between helpful feedback and advice to something that is okay? I mean, I'm listening, but I know this is not the direction.
It depends upon the depths of the conversation and, and where that information is coming from, and how strong that relationship is, and how vested is that relationship into your endeavor. They don't necessarily need to be vested with cash. They could have just a natural interest of seeing you success. They've been there with you since day one, providing you, because I have mentors, my co-founder has mentors, and then we also have advisors. So those that are been there with us in the trenches are more prone to listen to their advice because they're seeing exactly what we're seeing, but from a different perspective. because they've been there, versus those that have no information. They haven't been privy to anything prior to. They're just making an assumption or based observation of what they're seeing, and saying that this is what they should run, but not knowing that there's things going on behind the scenes that may impact that decision if we decide to take that advice and run with it. So that's how I was able to pretty much figure out what's good and what's not to listen to, just based off the individual. And then at the same time, does it resonate with your core? Does it stay true to your mission, or does it push you off the course of your mission? If it's going to push you off the course of the mission, stay true to your mission. If your vision and mission is one thing, you shouldn't allow others to come in and influence that to whereas you shift. Because once you shift, you lose the real, substance about that idea, the vision and mission that you have for yourself. Whereas now you're pretty much becoming Play-Doh and you're getting molded into whatever, everyone else wants you to be. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. What do you think is something that, if you were talking to someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, is maybe just starting out or is thinking about quitting their job, what piece of advice can you give them?
All right. First off, don't be like me. Don't quit your job too fast, folks. Don't quit your job too fast, because these startup things, they take way longer than what we all may perceive them to take. We see these overnight successes, but not realizing that those guys have been working in a closet for the past 10 years, and they just blew up because you didn't see the 10 years of work going up. You just saw that short period of success there. It's not that. Plan accordingly, make sure that you're positioned well, and like I said, learn from my mistakes. To whereas I left a little well too early, to whereas I ran and depleted savings and had to rebuild it, and get your house in order, get things in order before jumping out on your endeavor. But at the same time, find ways to move fast with your idea. You don't necessarily need to quit your job to validate the idea. You want to first build out. You want to customer discovery. You want to act on all those things to validate that idea fast. So move fast with validating it. Once you have validated that this is a problem, there's potential for paying customers. Not even a potential, a strong potential that we can have paying customers. This is what we're going to need far as for the next 18 months, not just for the business to stay afloat, but for us as founders to stay afloat. You need to take that take everything into, consideration before making that leap. But at the same time, don't just let the idea sit there and fester. You can still do things to push the idea forward to bring it to reality without taking that drastic leap. So that's all I would say. Plan accordingly. Still validate the idea before taking a big leap, and once you have validated it and you have all your necessary confirming information that what you have is something to move forward with, that's when you plan accordingly based off of what you need to attack that plan now. So that's what I would tell founders.
Perfect. Interesting to hear your take on the quitting the job. I agree with you. I think there's like two school of thoughts. One is go full in right away, like do
Now
it.
that's different if you come from if you're coming from money, or you worked in corporate America, you put away six figures and you don't honestly need investors, you can fund it, then yeah, go all in. But if you're like any other regular working everyday person and you still have bills and things of that nature, make sure that everything's in order first. Because yes, you will have that you will have some awkward conversations because of that rash decision making down the line, if you don't plan accordingly. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so one final question, and thank you so much for your time and for all the things you've said. I'd love to hear, what would you tell yourself back when you were just starting Previewed? What advice would you give? What would you say?
I would say patience. Patience is key, but at the same time, providing yourself grace. you cannot be, in the early days, I was much harder on myself, and everything when things didn't go as planned, I beat myself up and asking myself exactly why not me, things of that nature. But at the same time, something would happen and someone wouldn't be able to meet a deadline. I would give them grace, but I wouldn't give myself that grace. I would just say, Brian, give yourself grace and be patient and continue to move forward. Take it one day at a time and occasionally look back to see how far you came, but then move forward and continue to move forward to the end goal. That's it. And if you can do that, you will win.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brian.
No, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate you having me on today, and I hope that our conversation is impactful to a future founder or current founder, and that this has provided you some sort of inspiration to continue to push forward. Because this is a game of perseverance, and it's not about the fastest, who's the fastest win. It's about who can last the longest, the last man standing. That's it. And if you can embrace that and deal with everything that comes in front of you, you guys have it. So, with that being said, I appreciate today's conversation, and I thank you again for having me on the podcast, Eddie. And if any of your, followers or watchers or anyone in the audience would like to connect with me, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and you can find me. Just search preview CEO or Brian Glover, and I'd be more than happy to go ahead and connect with you. If there's something that you have a question about, definitely feel free to reach out. And if I have the time, I will definitely go ahead and make it to where as we can have a conversation. But at the same time, if there's any investors, any career seekers, or employers interested, definitely tap in with us here at Preview, where we're rebuilding America's workforce one trade at a time. And with that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your day and stay tuned for the great show that's in front of us here for 2025.